getting started on the Utilities Committee meeting, January 3rd, here at City Hall. 23rd.
And it's
All
what,
right.
9
something.
42.
9:42. Okay, well, number 13, huh?
Okay, so at the previous utility committee meeting, I had provided the well 12 application, the water right change application, and the subsequent preliminary permit to drill and test a well. And so, because I didn't have the actual permit, and so this is more as a follow-up, so that in our utility committee folder, we now have both 12 and 13 application and permit. So this is more of a, just kind of an update that I said that we would be providing this. And I guess we talked about it more at length at the last meeting, what this really entails. This is, as well 12 is about the Clifton Figley area. This is the new 10 up at Bethel.
We do 10 still, but called 13.
13.
It's 13,
Because
yeah.
10 still exists.
Yeah.
We're just not bringing it online.
Right.
Right,
So
and 10 will be there for the future.
Right.
10 will just be there until 100 years from now when somebody decides
Annapolis.
that they need it or something. But yeah, this is to get going on the well up on Bethel, which gives us a source.
Top of the hill on Sedgwick.
Yeah, it gives us a high point source.
I forgot how soon that could actually come online. That's a while yet, isn't it?
It has to be online by June of 2018. That's our drop dead deadline.
18 months. When do we start pounding a hole?
As soon as we get that contract issued, so we're gonna go out to bid. It's one of the many contracts that we're working on right now, so.
Nice. Okay.
Okay, next one is kind of an interesting turnabout. And it's actually, I support this. I don't know if all council members potentially support this, but we have a situation where, given a lot of things that have changed recently, primarily the city of Bremerton's need to provide water to the new school facility, which we did have a conversation a year or so ago about maybe the city just providing that water. Bremerton wants to serve that area. It's in their retail water service area. Also, the McCormick Communities, their construction schedule, and the original agreement for the 590 was to ultimately move towards a non-connected system. So there are a lot of things that were in play that led to the shared water, where the city of Bremerton and the city of Port Orchard in the 590 actually, theoretically, that we provide them as much water as they provide us. And that's why Bremerton doesn't have fluoride and McCormick doesn't have fluoride, because that's a two-way intertie, where the 260 zone off of Cook Road is a one-way. That agreement is set up that we purchase wholesale water, and it's a one-way, it's not two-directional. So there's been enough change in growth patterns and need that basically, and one of the biggest ones is, again, with McCormick Properties needing to build faster than the city could get infrastructure in place. That's why we're working on, and it's one of our topics, and we'll talk more about it, the Special Purpose District. There was a time when the previous McCormick Land Company folks just wanted to build a reservoir and then a pump station to get water to the 660. We found out over time that that was an inadequate preliminary conceptual design, because there needs to be additional source. So
So
That-
this cutting the chase on this issue is that if the water campus becomes reality, then we will have a reservoir that we don't need anymore. Because
Right.
they're gonna build a new reservoir that's solely ours instead of the one we're sharing with Bremerton. And this development agreement will drill a new well and build a new reservoir.
And
And we'll
not-
have a reservoir we don't probably need anymore. One comment from somebody on the finance committee was we should keep that asset and lease it to them versus sell them. The problem is it's a metal structure, it needs to be maintained. I think if we could get fair market value for it and get away from the liability and the maintenance is what Mark's advocating
Right.
for.
Our issue is it's just like the well 13 scenario. We now will have a source at a high point. There's no need for a 660 pump station to pump water up. We're going to end up with a storage tank that is basically dead storage. It has no purpose for the city of
Where
Port
is-
Orchard.
Where's that?
That's our
McCormick's.
that's our current tank at our 0.45 million gallon off of Clifton Figling. It was one that was built. It's our newest tank. It was one built in '92 or '93. So
So you.
this is a potential benefit to both the city of Bremerton and the city of Port Orchard for Bremerton to purchase that tank and to make that a part of their system so that they can serve their retail water service area north of.
And this is probably a couple
Clifton.
of years down the road because
Yeah.
McCormick's got to, before us even to consider that, McCormick has to build a whole bunch of improvements that makes this obsolete.
Right, they have to drill well 12, put in that reservoir tank. There's water main that needs to be built on Clifton. Ultimately, there's going to be a separation
Mhm.
of
Two systems.
Bremerton, the two systems. So, and at that point, that tank becomes just a standing.
For us.
For
them,
us.
It works for them, but it doesn't work for us.
But it doesn't change the service areas.
No.
So Bremerton will still service the McCormick Woods where they are
Well,
servicing.
They
now.
serve anything. They serve everything north of Clifton.
Right,
So, like the
Even if it's in the
ridge.
city.
right. But all of our water provision will be fluorinated. Theirs won't.
That's an agenda item. So we'll talk about.
Currently, we have a policy to provide fluoride.
Right.
And so
Currently.
We have fluoride we fluoridate currently. And if you remember, we did a survey, the Whittletons had pressed the issue and we did a survey. So there's an item, we'll talk more about that.
We don't have to decide on this item though for a couple of years.
No, this is just information.
Yep.
This is just letting
It's
you
something to
know.
think about because I can understand the feeling that we want to keep our assets. I can understand that feeling.
but if we can sell the
Yeah,
asset too and get
so I
money
think
for it,
that's part of the
we're not gonna give it
discussion.
away.
Yeah.
How much would we get for
We're,
something like that?
we're not getting a tremendous amount. You know, you're talking a couple $100,000 or so. It's, for us, it's more the liability of water quality.
So there's three, just moving past this, or as we move past it, it's good information. There's three things to remember. One, the way that the system is going to be designed is it's really at the improper elevation for us to be able to utilize it. Two, it's kind of like getting bigger rims and trying to put the same tire back on. You got to get new tires too because it's the wrong size. Number two, I totally see where you'd want to try and retain an asset so that you could lease it, but what that would be doing is putting all of the liability for any water quality issue on us. If Bremerton were to have a problem, they could point directly back at us and say, well, it's your reservoir. You have an issue, not us. Number three, as reservoirs age, they need a coating system, and that's both exterior and interior. Coating systems right now are going for a couple $100,000, and there's very few firms who can do it correctly. You drive down the highway as you're headed towards Loxie Egan's, and you can see the city of Bremerton has a reservoir there that's peeling, and they spent a couple $100,000 on that coating system. This reservoir is going to need a coating system. So if we were to retain that asset, it is something that we would have to invest a couple $100,000 in as well. So that is another consideration.
And that would be part of the discussion, like the costs and benefits. I mean, we like the idea that we're selling something to them, and we can raise our rates, but it may not be feasible.
Well, and if we're gonna have to put a couple $100,000 into it, instead of putting a couple $100,000, we get a couple $100,000, and they get to put that investment into it because it's theirs, and we move on to things and funding things that benefit us versus being a landlord.
At the end of the day, it would be a potential win-win, but this is just an introductory to it. This letter was provided after a discussion to just allow us to have the conversation to let you know that Bremerton does also think it benefits both. Because again, at the end of the day, we're trying to provide water to our own water retail service area and not have an interconnected system. That's been very problematic. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well 9 retrofit. So this is the final update. Just what you have in the packet, what you received all through 2016 were the weekly, monthly meetings and so forth. So what you have in here is that they did meet their December 31st deadline. We're now in receipt of the 100% PS&E. It's also been submitted to the Department of Health. And the next step will be for the city to go out to bid.
We really need to provide all the invoices. This is a lot of weed stuff here and killing a lot of trees in this packet.
Double-sided printing?
I meant to take, that was my, I meant to take
Or
those out.
even, I don't think you guys
I meant-
you see the invoices.
No, I meant to take the invoices out.
The cover page probably would have been sufficient.
Yeah, I meant to take the invoices out, but it was a bit of a scramble Friday to get the packet put together.
So when are we going out to bid? That's the important thing.
Probably February.
That's my guess.
I mean, like I said, we've got a lot of stuff that we're doing with
Done
procurement.
close by the end of the year, close to being done.
Well, remember, this is a 2-year project.
Okay.
What we budgeted in 17 and 18, we budgeted what? 60% in 17 and 40% in 18, something like that.
Yeah.
So we'll commence this year and we'll finish in 18, is how we budgeted it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, this is fairly brief.
We had an executive session on this. You weren't.
Yeah, we've had the exec session this
You guys got the same memo on that.
This-
There is a bill
1152.
that was introduced that they believe, we're not certain that the bill fixes this, because I don't know that this is,
I don't think
this is a
it's-
federal issue. This
Right.
isn't
State.
the state issue. So
Yes.
there's an effort in Olympia to try to fix this. We'll see.
It's not, it's
So their
legislature.
fixing would be providing money, and I
They're,
don't see them doing
no,
that.
they're fixed. That isn't anything in the language of that bill.
They're trying to get it back to the common vesting doctrine, which the legislature quite honestly screwed up in the first place when they moved away from the vesting doctrine from the Noble House versus Pierce County, where you just vest at time of complete application. That's what that was our vesting doctrine back in the early 90s. And in my opinion, the legislature muddled things up when they came in with this common vesting doctrine, where they established not at application, but at a building permit, a subdivision, or a development agreement, which then just created still more confusion. And now the EPA has come in and just said, no, it's not a vesting, you cannot vest.
It's a can of worms. You know, you guys got it.
Right.
A pretty deep overview in the executive session. This is a follow-up, and
Right,
this
this
is now
is-
making this memo a public document.
Right, this is just getting into the minutes.
More to come.
More to come, yeah. Okay, this was an interesting process. This was, we received a complaint from Miss O'Hearn. She lives out at 1301 Bay Street. I think she's the house right next to Solden's.
Oh, that way, okay.
I think this is it. And so she had a situation where she had one of the DOT SR 166 culverts it was discharging right by her property, but the culvert had failed and water was no longer running through the pipe, but running around the pipe and creating some damage to her property and her foundation. And so I immediately went to RCW 4724 that talks about maintenance, and we know that we have to maintain culverts and storm structures under 60 inches in diameter, but not repair. And so I had the city attorney go back and see if she could determine under RCW 4724 if there's any distinction between the word repair or maintain. Because my belief is we're to keep it clean and functioning, but if the pipe is starting to separate and it's under their roadway, that's a repair.
Under their roadway?
Because it's a
166.
166. It's
State highway.
remember that
Right.
they
But why would, who's the bidder?
RCW 4724 speaks specifically to state highways
Yeah.
that run through city limits. And so they maintain everything within the traveled way. Striping, asphalt,
Yep.
subgrade integrity. We do sweeping, roadside vegetation.
What we learned
ditching.
though is it's ours.
What we learned is there's no real definable
If we would have maintained
distinction.
it better, it wouldn't have failed.
No, that doesn't say that. It just says that they don't distinguish between repair and maintenance. Is really what it boils down to.
Let's see.
Right. Yeah, it's not that we didn't do it. It's the RCW really doesn't distinguish.
Well,
So
Does the highway does it have to be,
We think we can align it. We're gonna try.
well,
to-
here's part two to this. So
goes down the highway?
the biggest piece for me was Fish and Wildlife. Because Fish and Wildlife is under a mandate that they do not allow you to extend the life of any culvert that is not barrier free. And so if this culvert was connected to any sort of stream, we would have had to put in a barrier free arch pipe. It would have been $1 million project. But thankfully, in talking with Department of Fish and Wildlife, they're very familiar with all the cross culverts on 166, and they only convey, because you have Ross Creek, and then you have Johnson Creek, which is Port Orchard Boulevard. All the other cross culverts only convey roadside ditches. And so that's the one exemption from this Fish and Wildlife's #1 mandate these days.
So what's the solution?
The solution is we can repair it. But
We're gonna try to run a sleeve in it? How big
we're
is
gonna
it?
try. It's like a 12-inch concrete culvert, but the problem is it's at a really weird angle, so I don't know if we can line it or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you can pull a liner through that angle, so I anticipate that we can get creative and
Yeah,
A woodchuck.
do some infield engineering.
right. I mean, last
Is that
time we
connection
wanted,
out in the roadway or is it in the shoulder?
It's under the shoulder. I mean, it's
So you might have to
definitely-
redo that connection point.
right, we may have to dig up half the road, and that's just a lot of traffic to
And we
manage.
have to pay for the whole thing?
Mhm.
I think we're gonna have a window of opportunity. I mean, we'll go out there and there's some epoxies that you can use underwater that we might be able to do a point repair. If at some point in time we have to dig it up, I think we wait until they shut down SR 166 for the pave. They have to do a final pave down there. We just coordinate those two projects at the same time. But I don't want to say that we can do a point repair, but
You're gonna start there.
I'm gonna say I'm 75% confident.
How large is the fail of the whole thing? Is it huge? Do you even know?
It's relatively small, but.
But the issue is it's impacting
Continual
house.
water.
private property.
Well, can't we divert that water somehow? Could we divert it with some kind of a temporary pipe or
No,
something?
it's
Nothing
the
like that?
water's coming,
From underneath.
From underneath the
Underneath the
road
roadway is
and-
where the fail point is.
and it's then getting into a foundation.
Maybe
So
what season's over. So,
Anyway, I'm just,
Yes,
but
okay.
the good news on this
It'll be
is,
fixed by spring.
Here we are trying to
Right.
solve a problem that we don't even know anything about.
Mark's got us down in the weeds again.
Yes.
sorry, well, this is supposed to be information.
No, I'm saying, Fred and I, can't we do this? Can't we do that?
Just don't stop.
Okay, on the McCormick Water Sewer,
Special purpose district is what we're on.
right, McCormick Water Sewer Special Purpose District.
You don't have any
Oh,
supporting documents.
we didn't have anything.
What I will say, we're gonna have a discussion tonight about Code City. This agreement,
Tomorrow.
tonight, yeah, tomorrow night, sorry. I thought it was Tuesday already. Contracts and development agreements are probably the biggest hindrance we have being a second-class city. And this has impacted our ability to try, because we're trying to create a special purpose district that the developers at McCormick build all of our water campus out there. And we create a special district out there separate, an overlay is really what it is. And this would have been much easier had we been a code city.
Right, so when this whole issue, and it started with the pump station for Cedar Heights, how we did that with our current code, we put a development agreement together. There's been some consternation over that development agreement.
State auditors didn't like it.
State auditors didn't like it. We basically refunded them 100% of the design and construction. They felt like it should have been a lesser amount because they had their requirement plus the other benefit. Thomas and I's experience in other jurisdictions where they have this written into their code is that you can do this simply because it's written as part of your code that you allow this. So because we're having to go through the extra process of creating this overlay district, this special purpose district, so that we can do what ultimately we're trying to do, which is let the developer build the infrastructure for the city on their time, their schedule, on their dollar, which is more efficient than the city doing it as a
Public Works.
public
project.
works prevailing wage procurement. Takes years and years for us to get this. Plus, we'd have to have $13.5 million to do this, and it could take years for us to get to doing this. Whereas they're ready today to go out and just do it. And so, other jurisdictions do this all the time. We're just having to go through this process of setting up a special purpose district in which we can define the benefits to the developer and to the greater area, and then come up with a mathematical equation that gives them a 30% credit on their future connection charges. And at the end of the day, we get the infrastructure on their time schedule, and at the end, even though they'll upfront the capital, they'll realize a savings in $3 million at the end. So it benefits both parties.
So we've been working on something that for a year, and a tremendous amount of our legal bill in this, putting this agreement and special purpose district together, where if we were a code city, we could define this in our code, and you just be able to come in and do it. And we want these guys to come in and invest $13 million we don't have and
Right.
build our water and sewer system out there for us.
Right.
It benefits them, and it definitely benefits us, because we wouldn't get to it for a year. It isn't even, some of this stuff isn't even on our capital improvement plan yet.
Right. The only thing is we have to be careful not to plan for those connection charges in our budget.
Which we didn't.
You've already
We don't.
compensated for that. Somehow that shows up when we don't make that mistake.
Right, and when we worked with Katie on the water and sewer gap analysis, we didn't factor in,
Those were developer charges.
right, we didn't factor in growth as paying for that, because it's so risky. I mean, we were very conservative in that estimation. I think one of the important things to remember is there's a lot of terms out there. Special purpose district, credit, reimbursement, the way that I'm viewing this is,
And the city isn't part of that map. I know you keep looking for it, what we're doing.
No, I
Th-
was-
This
I-
is the hydrant report.
I know,
know.
what I'm seeing here is one that's not included, and I don't know why. It caught my eye.
The important piece here is they're going to invest a lot of money in our
Yes,
system.
yes.
They're also, going to provide a lot of, we're talking about upwards of 3,000 ERUs. This is a lot of connections. It would make the McCormick area just as big as the city, or the traditional city. So what we're doing here, it's a lot of different terms, but what it really is we're looking at their impact of the system and how much of the system should they pay for when they're providing everything. They're putting the well, the reservoir, the transmission.
And they're gonna build some of the stuff that's in our capital improvement plan, which then we'll be able to free up funds to fund other things much sooner in the older, more antiquated parts of the city. So it's tremendous win-win, and I was just pointing to, I wasn't prepared to answer that question at the work study, and this is one of the examples I'm gonna share tomorrow night of something that has hindered us because we're a second-class city.
An obvious benefit.
Mhm.
We need to have nice listening of all of that.
Well, and we've reported this in previous meetings, so this isn't a
Right,
known topic, but unless either the developer or the city are able to get well 12 and the new reservoir and the new piping in, we're really looking at a source-based moratorium.
right. The thing is, what you should be doing is videotaping the repair of this one single hydrant over here. And people would get an idea of what we're talking about when you consider what we have to deal with. Because the cost, I mean, that's incredible, isn't it really?
For one hydrant.
One,
Yeah. Well, and these older systems too, you think you're just gonna go in and rebuild the hydrant, and then we find out we can't rebuild the hydrant. Then when we go to replace the hydrant, then we find out, well, the pipe all the way out into the street is substandard. It's like remodeling your old house. You think you're doing this, and by the time you're done, you've done this. It's less.
I was just gonna hang a picture. All of a sudden.
And then all the plaster sheeted off the wall.
yes. All right, happy news.
Okay.
Well, and this isn't unique to the city. of Portland.
Right, of course.
I mean, this is.
And the age of our city.
Right.
So anyway, we're coming close to having that agreement put together. It should be coming before the full council, I would hope, in the next couple of months.
Sharon's working on the, she is working on the language as far as,
Sorry to interrupt. Stuart stopped by and was wondering if you were going to be attending the phone call that you had asked Chelsea and Brianna if they'd offer support with Senator.
I just kind of put it in their
Okay,
court. What time is it?
10:30.
Is he here?
He was. I told him I would-
Okay, I wasn't.
Okay.
I just kind of put them together, so.
Okay.
So
I was
thank
just
you for the
making
heads
sure.
up.
Okay.
All right. Tree strap.
No, fire hydrant repair. So that's this here. So this is just, so there were two things that we have finally been able to implement now that we've made some changes. One of them, the valves and the hydrants were two things that I continue to get pushback on. No matter, even though after I got my water certification, they said, you need to do these things. I'd say, hey, we need to do these things. And my pushback would be, you don't know what you're talking about.
Valves or the hydrant?
The city was flushing once a year. We're doing it 3 times a year now. Nobody wanted to inventory the valves and work the valves, even though you're required to work the valves. So the good news is, we now have since we now have a GIS platform, and we are still going to get the ViewWorks that allows us to manage that GIS platform better. We now have a platform in which we're actually touching every fire hydrant, documenting where the hydrant is and whether it's operational. And we're basically doing the same thing with valves, but we're doing hydrants right now. And so, as you can see, in 2016 alone, we did a total of 345 that we touched that were operational, so that's good. But what wasn't good is 45 of those, or 45, so out of 390, 45 were inoperable.
Is that like Bravo Terrace area? Where all the
No,
buildings
that's
are?
just, no, you can see the red in the map. I mean, it's kind of,
Well, this
Yeah,
here.
it is.
I mean, there's,
It's up above it. But
Well, just clarification here. 45 of them have a problem. Now, this map doesn't differentiate whether the problem is that it's not operable or it just has an
Okay.
issue.
Okay.
It could be that it's leaking,
Okay.
or it could be that.
So they should be orange instead of red.
well, and I,
it's got a bag on it, it doesn't work. And I haven't seen that
Okay,
many out there that have, I don't think there's 45 of them that have bags on them. The one on Kitsap Street had a bag on it.
66 of the hydrants were inoperable, and they have been repaired. 45 of them continue to have an issue.
Oh,
And this
oh.
map doesn't show which, it just says there's 45 of them still out there that have an issue. Sometimes when a hydrant's inoperable, it's very simple to fix. Other times, like over here, it's very intensive. So
so the main thing is we now have a GIS system and a program where, the attribute file connected to this actually shows exactly what it is. So we're going to be able to, Dennis has been kind of our lead on this. So he has the ability now to schedule his week, and he knows which hydrants, he's going to do 5 hydrants a week or 3 hydrants a week, and he'll keep updating this. And so we've never had that before, and we always should have. And we're going to have the same thing with valves as we inventory our valves, and then we start creating a sheet that says, okay, this is operable, and we're going to maintain these every 6 months or a year. We get all the valves on a maintenance schedule, and when we find out there's a valve that isn't operable, then we get that on a list to replace it. So it's long in coming, but it's moving in the right direction.
How do you decide which ones to start with?
So the big factor for us is what's the degree of failure? Could it still put a fire out? We've got fire hydrants out there right now that I'll tell you, as soon as you open them up, the bonnet starts just spewing water all over the place, but it could still put out a fire. We never bag a hydrant unless it won't put out a fire. The other things are kind of secondary issues. So can it still put out a fire? Number one. If it can, then we're going to bump that down the list. Number two, how close is it to where people are sleeping? And how many people are in the area that would be affected? And number three, are there other hydrants in the area that could be used to put that fire out? So those are our 3 criteria.
The city, the hydrant you pointed out to us, has a leaky foot valve that doesn't seat, and it's an inconvenience.
It's a
that,
low priority.
That it works. It's leaking water around the base of it, and we need to fix the foot valve.
Right.
you
The
know.
only issue there would be any kind of washout or
Right.
something like that, but
Yep.
it's not like it wouldn't service the area.
So what Thomas is saying is we've prioritized, where's
So
the
you
life
say-
and safety issues, and then we'll get
Go ahead and get a
to,
few fish in there and we'll
Yeah.
address it next year
Yeah.
sometime.
we just
It's-
don't let it turn into a wetland.
No, but there's floating sand.
It's really difficult, and these are real conversations that I think that the public doesn't get to see oftentimes, which is, all of these issues are real issues, but you're constrained by 2 things, budget and staff. So we want to fix every hydrant tomorrow, but the reality is it's no different than, you've got a budget for your household, and, all of these items are important, but,
I'm curious.
It's need versus want.
Did we concentrate much on hydrants in the past?
No,
This is something that's kind of been neglected for
This has
quite a
been a-
long
This
period
is,
of time.
and as a matter of fact, I was getting beat up a little bit about the fire chief, because we partnered with those guys this year for the first time ever. They had a crew going around, and we were out there with them. And it took, he has 2 summer hires, and it took a lot longer than he wanted it to, but we felt it was important to exercise not just the hydrant, but the foot valve, and do more than what we've been doing in the past, so that we could recognize where all the problems were. So it shouldn't be as big a task going forward. And in particular, if we're carving out a little bit of time every week to one employee, it's not a 3-month project now.
There's a traditional school of thought of the, deferred maintenance program. We'll get to that later. And I'll tell you, we never want to shut a road down and impact people, whether it's their commute or anything else. But people pay a water bill every month, and no different than they pay a sewer bill. And we have to constantly be assessing our assets and repairing them. Otherwise, when we have failures, we're not going to be able to shut the main down because those valves don't work, or we're not going to be able to put that fire out, or So when you have a lengthy deferred maintenance program, you're going to have 66 hydrants that don't work, and it's going to take you a lot longer. That curve is tremendous to get there, but if we start now, then in a couple of years we won't be having this conversation. It'll be
Right.
So to answer your question, we're in year 2 of a whole new. Prior to 2016, we were not testing valves and we were not testing the hydrants to the level we should have been.
It took 2 retirements
Yes.
to get to the point to where the message was clear. The water system manager had the autonomy and the authority to make this happen. Because when we hired Thomas, he was being thrown roadblocks.
So all we'd have to do is compare years and what's
We're
been
playing
done.
catch up.
It's very easy.
We're playing catch up.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
that's right.
It's wonderful catch up. Good work.
Okay, the next item is basically in that same vein of catch-up. The city we have a fairly robust cross-connection control program where we test our backflow devices, and then we make anybody that has their own backflow device prove that they've had it inspected every year. Mainly, for the most part, on the private owned, those are 90% irrigation, landscape systems. The other ones are some commercial businesses and stuff, so forth. But we have a fairly robust cross-connection control program in place. This is the same thing, but for grease. And so we've had incidences where we've had grease from private businesses create all sorts of problems for us down on Bay Street. I think in 2015 or 16 we had 2 incidences within 3 months that backed up sewage. And so we're going to basically implement a similar program. We're still working out the details. What's in your packet is the information we got from West Sound Utility District on their operation of the plant, on their mandate for fatty and oil grease. And then also is, now that Darren has come over from West Sound, they have a very robust grease program, but it probably goes beyond what we're going to want to do. They actually send people onto private properties and inspect every grease trap. I don't know if we're going to do that or not. We haven't really gotten to that detail. My thought was we would do like we do on the cross-connection control, where we send out letters and say you need to provide this documentation. But
Prove to us you service
right,
your
but
system.
so that's yet to be determined whether we're going to do it that way or we're going to do it like West Sound, where they actually get an agreement in place and go into property, because obviously it's a private property matter.
It seems to work with our. It's backflow valves and storm detention facilities where we require, we send we've got it in our code that you're going to do these things. Some people automatically comply, others and send their stuff in. Others you have to send reminder letters to. Sometimes they've done it, forgot to send us the documentation. I know at the bank we had a stormwater system that we had to have serviced on an annual basis and provide documentation. And we always had it done. It was just whether the contractor sent it to the city to certify that they did it. Other businesses need a little more encouragement to do what they need to do.
And there are some people that there's language barriers, there's understanding. There are other businesses that just don't want to deal with it. They just absolutely think it's Big Brother in my back pocket, and they fight us all the way. So we'll see. Now, just like with water, if there's a business, and especially if it's a Table 9 business, and the Table 9 is like severe, you could get radioactive chemical or biological backflow, so meat processing, radioactive, whatever. We have the ability as a water purveyor, if somebody isn't maintaining their system, we can shut their water off because we have to protect the system. We can do the same thing with grease, and so one of the things in the packet is you've got the inventory that we've started. Darren's already started an inventory, so that's great. Then we've got maybe a good template for us to use, which is Kitsap County's. Now, Kitsap County's talks about 100 milligrams per liter. Well, you're not going to know that looking at it. What West Sound's language is no visible grease. That's much easier for our people to go to a clean out on the property line and look down and see if there's visible grease. And at that point, hey, there's a business down on Bay Street that there was an obvious problem. That I believe there was a language barrier, there was an understanding, and there was just a lack of desire to comply. And we actually dealt with them at some point, but to have the ability to go in and say, okay, we see visible grease, we're just gonna not allow you to discharge.
We can shut their water off so they could.
Well, right, you have to shut their water off. So
That'd be part of the compliance process.
right. So this is a serious situation. It isn't just the treatment plant. This is, like I said, we just had Bay Street TV'd and cleaned as part of our annual, and then we had to go back in twice and clean grease. That's costly. So this is kind of like one of those long and coming needs, and with Darren's experience at West Sound, having set it up there for them,
This list isn't that, there aren't that many.
No.
Bethel and Mile Hill are in West Sound service area. So
Right.
this is downtown and Sedgwick and Sydney primarily.
Right.
It's
So
pretty easy to imagine where the problems would be.
right, and
It's kitchens.
there's two types of grease traps. There's the larger grease trap that you would have in a larger restaurant, and think of Port of Arda. I designed that grease trap, so I can speak to it. A grease trap of that size, of that many chairs, that many seats, has very specific design that you have to have a grease trap within so many feet, because you have a temperature coming out, and you want that to be hot as it gets into it, but then cool in the tank and then solidify in the tank. Those are fairly easy to manage if they're sized and designed properly.
And maintain.
Yeah, they still have to maintain. The problems you're having are with the smaller, what I'd call TI type tenant improvement, where you have a suite that used to be a chiropractor, and now they're some sort of fast food place.
They're teriyaki.
Right, they're doing under the counter, these, if they have anything at all, then they put in an under the counter, which doesn't allow the grease to actually cool. And they only work if the people that work there are doing like you do at home. I've got a drain field at home, so I'm freakish about everything needs to be, all the grease and oils need to be wiped clean before you put it in the sink. Well, these employees aren't doing that. And so the under the sink grease traps then don't work, because you have to get the grease off, and then what small amount you have can be captured in this under the sink. So that's really, it's as much as an educational outreach piece, and that's part of what this document is. There's a educational outreach component. So that's, to me, is going to be huge, is to educate folks. Okay, the last item is, there's two parts to it. It's about fluoridation, and what I have in the packet is, because we're going to have this, there are two projects that are going to force connection of McCormick to the city system. Either the Stetson Heights project, which is down at Sedgwick and Sydney, connecting up to the McCormick water system from the east side, or potentially a connection as development comes up Clifton. Now with our McCormick communities in this special purpose district, at one time we felt like there may be a connection at that point. It looks like that isn't going to benefit anybody. So the The issue though is we have to realize that McCormick's going to get connected one way or the other, and at that point we have fluoridation. McCormick doesn't, so this whole fluoridation issue is going to come up. So what I have in the packet is first is the email that I got from 2012 when we did the last survey, and it just basically gives the general, how did the city become fluoridated? Started in 1969 and then 1970. So we've had fluoride since 1970.
And our code says, unless we change it, we will have fluoride.
Right.
So that's really the discussion. I mean, and we're probably 2 years out until those connections are reality, but we're planning for the system, so we need to start having some discussion and make some decisions. Are we going to have a debate in our community about fluoridation? Because if we don't, we're gonna design systems and implement it in areas that we don't currently have it.
Yeah, City of
Because our code
Bremerton.
says we fluoride.
Right, City of Bremerton spent $100,000 on fluoridation equipment before they
Put it to a vote.
voted, and then they never implemented these systems. So they're.
But we put it to a vote. We have it
In 69.
in 69.
And then if you remember, we went back out in 2012, and so the second piece in your packet is the survey, and we came back with a 59.2% pro keep the fluoride in, 40.4 not, and we had an actual, I think, what was the percentage?
20% return.
Yeah, 20% return. So that's the second piece in the packet. The third piece in the packet I find intriguing. So we know that there are going to be some changes in the Department of Health. Well, I guess this is the EPA. Two significant changes. One is manganese. Manganese has always been aesthetic, not. It didn't have an MCL due to health. They've had now recent studies that manganese in high concentrations actually in infants and elderly can cause some neurological damage. Now, we don't have manganese in our system that's anywhere near that level, but what it means is when there is an MCL, and that's why we've decided to, part of the reason why we're having the treatment on 13 and at 12 and at 9 is that we're going to address that, because we know we were given the heads up a few years ago that, hey, EPA is going to create a maximum contaminant level for this, and so we're going to have to treat it. It can no longer be an aesthetic issue.
Aesthetically, we want to get away with it anyway. It's what's causing all of our
Right.
dirty water.
Right, we don't want it aesthetically, but from an actual mandated concentration level, we need to address it. And so fluoride is the other. So fluoride has always been 0.7 milligrams per liter, but 0.8 to 1.3 has always been the operational limit. And the MCL, maximum contaminant level, is 4 milligrams per liter. So that's, 3 to 4 times higher than your operational range. So obviously, because it's such a touchy subject, they're giving you a 4 milligram per liter MCL, but they're allowing you to operate at 0.8 to 1.3. That tells you that they're saying you're going to operate at a much lower level than what you legally could get up to before it's going to harm somebody. Well, they're going to change that, and they're going to move us down to, instead of 0.7, they're going to move it just to 0.5 to 0.9 from, 0.8 to 1.3 is going to drop to 0.5 to 0.9.
Where are we typically at?
We're about it depends on the site, but we've maintained between I'd say a 0.7 and a 1.2. That's kind
Right.
of where we've lived.
Right. We've always stayed within the
1.2 won't be acceptable anymore. Got to be under 0.9.
right.
Correct.
So, but we're adding fluoride.
Right.
But so we know that this new optimum level is going to drop again from 0.8 to 1.3 to 0.5 to 0.9. we have fluoride naturally occurring in our water at 0.3.
Yeah, anywhere
Ish.
between 0.2 and 0.3. I mean, we pulled a natural reading Friday, and it was a 0.24.
Right. So that tells me, what that tells me is if you don't want to create a fight, and you don't want to fight with the dentists or the no fluoride people, we could provide very close to the bottom end of the range by
Naturally.
not adding
Anything.
naturally.
Yeah.
So
We're halfway there.
Yeah.
right. So we'll have to, this is just all informational. Again, it's kind of new information with the EPA dropping the acceptable range, knowing what we have naturally occurring. That'll just be more information as we go back, and whether we do a survey or we take it back to a vote. I don't know what we're going to do from a policy standpoint. That's your guys' decision. This is just informational at this point, knowing that we need to address this though in the not too distant future, because at some point we're going to have to make a connection.
Is this a work study item to have a dialogue about this as far as what we want to do as a
Oh,
community?
and how soon would we actually need to do anything about it? You
I
said 2
would-
years?
I would think by this summer, we would want to have this on a work study, I think.
Yeah.
Because we're going to design, we want to make designs that either have it or doesn't have it.
Right. How consistently are we getting that 0.3 concentration in our water? Does it ever, are there places where it isn't in the water?
No, it's
In every well, we have that
yes.
0.3.
Because we do when you sample your wellhead, you're sampling pre-treated, and we've got that documented for decades that that's our level. Typically, when we get a fluoride reading on a pre-treatment out of the wellhead that's not between 0.2 and 0.3, it's operator error. We go pull it again, and
There it is.
Yeah.
So I guess let's go back through the list. I didn't have anything that was really ready to go to a work study yet, but let's just verify. So the well 13, that we already talked about that at a work study. I don't think the McCormick, I think it's too soon. We're still just in conversation, or do you want to, the city of Bremerton thing?
No, that's a couple of years out.
Okay, I think we should wait till
I-
after the election. I mean, after the bond measure. I think if the school district passes, then I think we need to have a
the
conversation.
driver for that is that campus is developed, and when that reservoir is obsolete.
Well,
then
there's
we
two
have-
pieces. If the school bond measure passes, and then we get that special purpose district ironed
The
out.
special purpose district is a driver,
Right.
and us building a different reservoir,
Right.
which
Those.
is a year or two out.
No.
We'll see.
That reservoir is McCormick's property.
We don't have
communities.
an agreement in place yet. Once that agreement's in place and construction starts, I would
Based on their schedule, that
well-
agreement is going to be done here, in the next month or so? They're going to be drilling a well and building a reservoir.
no need to have this discussion yet on two. We need, because our council has to bless the development agreement or the special purpose district agreement first.
Right, I'm not saying it needs to come out now, but it's not a year or two out. It's months.
Well, when we've got that agreement and they're building it, then I think that's when we
Yeah.
start talking serious about.
Surplusing assets, nobody's started, we don't have an agreement for them to build it, nor have they started building it yet. Once those are the two triggers, and if it's 3 months from now, great. If it's a year from now, that's probably more
Okay.
realistic.
Well, and that's only a month away, less
Mhm.
than a month away for that ballot measure.
Mhm.
Right.
I have a gut feeling on how that's gonna go, so I'm not sure how this discussion will.
I think it's good to just put it on people's radar, and it sounds like everyone is aware of it now, except maybe Clancy, because of the discussion on the two different committees. I think it's just a good idea to get used to.
It's informational at this point.
Right.
There's nothing to act on. When we
Right.
get to the point we're gonna act on something, then we'll take it to the work study.
Yeah, let's wait until at least we know what's happening with the school district, and then we'll see where we're at on the special purpose district, and then we'll.
I'll talk
So the
to
grease
Clancy
trap
about
program,
that.
I think it needs to be refined further and come back to this body.
What's that one?
The grease trap.
Yeah.
We need to refine it one more, because this is just very in its infancy. We'll bring back a more refined product to this committee and then take it to work study. And then on the fluoridation issue,
That would be,
That one's probably the only one,
it's pretty important to talk about that.
yeah, we probably need that at a work study in,
March,
you know,
And another thing, I think,
April.
April.
from
March is pretty
from a
full.
medical standpoint, is there a point where that 0.3 is too low to have any kind of impact? I'm not sure. We had it well when my daughter was little, and we had to give her drops, fluoride drops.
Mhm.
And we do think it makes a big difference in the health, you know, the health.
Yeah.
It's a public health benefit.
Right.
Because you had the resources to get those drops and to take your child to the dentist.
Right.
And from a public health standpoint, it's providing that fluoride to the poor in our community that don't have the ability to take their children to the dentist. Because it's really about the children. We're either
Yes.
paying now or we're gonna pay
Right.
from a
Later
public
on.
health standpoint in the future.
Well, and I'm totally in that camp,
Mhm.
totally. And
Well, it isn't just finances, it's just having parents that are,
aware.
well, or, you know, so when I went to the dentist as an adult, I had the dentist look in my mouth and said, "Oh, you must have grown up in Bremerton." I'm like, "Yeah." He
No
says, "Yeah,
fluoridation.
no fluoridation." And I had a dad that he let us go to the dentist once every 4 or 5 years. So I go to the dentist. "Hey, Dad, I only had 8 cavities." "Well, good for you, son." You know, that's just, and I've got 6 crowns, and you know, because of it, is I have parents who are paying the medical bills and didn't send us to the doctor for anything, and we didn't have fluoride. So I was on the backside of the curve as an infant. So, you know.
Well, I have seen huge benefits for having fluoride, and I was involved in this issue in Madison, Wisconsin. And there was a lot of evidence, and I think once people start seeing that, they get a better idea. And there's plenty of evidence now that no one is being poisoned.
Well, and the MCL is being lowered.
Right.
Is there enough benefit from what we're providing naturally?
But we
Yes,
need
to
to,
get-
we
to get
need to
clo-
have something that
Mhm.
that shows us if that's enough or not.
Right, but
And
if
if
you-
it's lower than the 0.3,
I think that would be a question from before we go to work study.
Yes.
Can the health district provide any guidance?
Right, is 0.3 adequate?
Yeah.
and 0.3 is,
Will they weigh in?
sometimes it's 2 point something,
I-
0.2.
I would say that the health district will not weigh in. They are
They
gonna,
won't.
they are gonna say, we've been told by the EPA that the optimum operating range is 0.5 to 0.9, and that's our stance. Because it is such a, contested issue,
Right.
They don't want to get into
Well, even
politics.
that pronouncement would help because here we have operating tolerance, so how's that as opposed to being?
right?
Right.
So-
An email or a memo from them to that position, because
Or the
I can
medical
see that.
community,
And
Yeah.
more than likely, what they're gonna say is, this is what we've been told by the EPA, they're kind of the middleman. And if you want further guidance, they're gonna say, you need to reach out to the American Dental Association.
Right.
well, that's what we may need to do.
Well, you remember what happened during the survey?
I do.
Is we had,
I do.
it's as
But there was-
contentious
It's a
as,
contentious
Okay, but the
issue.
thing is, a lot of the information that was presented during that period of time is very outdated from the side not wanting fluoride. It turns out that some of that was from the 70s. And in that same line, the later research proved that earlier information wasn't right.
You're gonna get,
And I don't know how many
you're
people
gonna get
there are that
it,
are
you're
that
gonna get
really
it here
that
and
strong.
here.
this
you
is
know.
as polarizing as road versus
It's
right.
funny they didn't pass it in Bremerton. You'd think they needed it.
They,
And
They need it more than
Oh, they
anybody.
really-
Yeah, not
They got
Bremerton
a
does need it.
low income.
Burlington didn't have it when they tried to do it. You could talk to Kathleen Cahall, and they got beat. And then when we did it, that's the only time I've ever been called a fascist and was almost hit with a cane. So it's very polarizing.
What we're trying to avoid here is, we need a decision made here before the end of the year. We need to start this dialogue April, May, because what we don't want to do is spend engineering dollars designing something that our community potentially doesn't want. I think we gotta check in here.
And another thing is, we're seeing, a lot of our growth though is taking place out in areas that we're not servicing water. So,
Oh, yeah, we are. All of these houses that we're gonna build,
Well,
there's a component that was built. McCormick West won't be, but the rest of that is
all our
ours.
water service area.
That's why this campus is being built.
McCormick West,
Served area
Right.
is not.
The thing is, that's a lot of new families and
The
children.
ridge.
Correct.
right.
So,
The build out of McCormick and the build out of McCormick West is our water system.
West isn't.
West
West is.
West
West
North-
is.
North is.
Anything
North, I'm
is
sorry,
Okay.
north isn't.
So
You're right.
McCormick North, McCormick
Yeah,
Meadows.
the commercial component and the multifamily component won't be. Everything else is us.
right, which weighs heavily for
Yeah.
continuing this
Right.
prevention program.
Right, McCormick West is 1,500 homes alone. The rest of McCormick
The
is,
build-out area for McCormick that the city will provide potable service to is 2,714 homes.
Oh, my word.
It's huge.
Right, so we really need to have accurate information on this one.
And it's not gonna hurt for me to send that email to health and see what they say. And
Mhm.
and if they do point me to the
Yeah.
American Dental Association, I can
Then
forward
you-
that email on and say,
You know, we're having this debate at our, you know,
right, what updated information do you have? What's the
Yeah.
minimum recommended?
sure. And I can get you, so the EPA, I've downloaded it already. The EPA has backup documentation for what they received from the Dental Association and why they lowered the tolerance range. So I can provide that also.
They lowered it.
My guess is that they're reacting to the non-fluoride folks
I think
because,
so.
because they're citing.
Trying to find more of a bigger,
Right, because it's not the MSD, what is it now called?
Oh,
It's basically, it's the big book on stuff. When you're talking about what you can be exposed to at a certain amount of time before it becomes toxic, and so the fluoride, which we use, what's our source? It's hypochloric.
as far as
The material we use, people use different things to add fluoride.
right.
We use hypochlorite.
Yeah, we use, God, if you wouldn't have said it, I'd be able to.
it'll
But
probably.
anyway, what we use it's got this safety thing, and it's 100 times these levels. That's what any exposure is going to cause any issues. The problem is the perfluoride folks go right to those. This is what happens. It's like, well, no, this isn't what happens. It's like scuba diving. It's
So
like,
we just got to, April, May, and we need to coordinate it with, we've got some heavy lifting with the development regs coming through, a work study.
Right.
We,
And is that
This
going
is-
to result in, are we going to have a survey again?
that's
Or
that's
are
for
we-
the council, I mean, if we take no action, we will be fluoridating
Right.
this system.
And we just did a survey in 2012, so this isn't that many years later.
Correct.
Well, I'm not sure that we'd go to the expense of having another survey. 5 years later, right?
That's a policy decision that the council needs to make, and we're just bringing it forward.
you have 3 options. Do a
Right.
survey, not do anything, or take it to a vote. I mean, you have different options.
Meaning like on a ballot? Ballot?
That would be $10,000, $12,000.
I know.
And we're probably talking a few thousand to put it in and staff time to manage a survey.
5 years, I mean, that was those results were pretty high. 59.2%.
Only 20% participated, but we asked you, if you chose not to participate,
Right.
you don't get an opinion.
Okay, so what time is it right now?
Nice.
10:45.
10:45.
10:45. Okay.
Okay. So the next meeting will be back to our regular